These are creatures beyond the wall. They done found 2 real mandrakes, y'all. Can you imagine that thing talking? Yeah, man, guess what? We growing off the tree, cuz you'd never guess. We've been growing off the tree. It says, countries and isles that are beyond the lands of Cathay. This is the different continents beyond the ice wall. For entertainment purposes only. You guys better lock in and buckle up because you're in for another creepy and scary TikTok reaction video. You want to be careful with these disturbing discoveries because they might make you rethink your whole reality. Before we do anything, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also hit that bell and turn notifications to all so you don't miss a live or a new video. So let's dive into these creepy and scary dark waters. How did they know it tasted like crab meat? For this to be a legend, they go into way too much detail. What did they say this was? The Lamb of Tartary? We gotta write this down. We're going that route today, so you guys better lock in and buckle up because this is gonna be another creepy and scary banger.
Mystical and Otherworldly Beings, Part 32, the Tartarian Goat Plant Entity. Okay, so admittedly, this one's a little bit out there. It's also known as the Lamb Plant of Tartary. Some of you may be familiar with the concept of Tartaria, in that there is a modern conspiracy theory that suggests that Tartaria was an area between Mongolia and Eastern Europe that had extremely advanced technology and that was destroyed during a mud flood, and the advanced technology was then suppressed by the powers that be today. Put all that aside for a second. The reality is that in terms of mainstream archaeology, they do acknowledge Tartary as a loosely knit collection of peoples and cultures. And in the Tartarian culture, there is the myth of this lamb plant thing. Essentially, the lamb is the fruit or the produce of this plant, and it is stuck to the plant's root and stem system through a kind of umbilical cord as depicted here. Now, these vegetable lambs were said to have grown all over the land of Tartary when Tartary was a place. Apparently the sheep, or the produce of this plant, would graze on the land around the plant, and when they finished grazing all of the shrubbery around the plant, both the plant and the sheep would die. Now, the creature itself went by many names. One of the more famous ones is the Boromats or the Boromats. There have been a number of writers that have written about this creature. Many of them suggest, especially the more contemporary ones, have suggested that it wasn't exactly a real being. It was actually a plant that went extinct, and the fruit of the plant just happened to resemble a lamb, but it was obviously a fruit and not an actual animal that grew from this plant. Now, obviously, since Tartaria no longer exists, we can't verify this, and apparently the plant no longer exists either. But it's fun to think that they may have seen this actual plant that had a fruit that looked like a lamb, and so they created this mythical being out of it. Who knows?
If you're asking me, there's definitely some truth to it, because too many people are saying this myth from different parts of the world. You know? Yeah, it could have been a plant that went extinct, but they were way too in depth with their description with this plant. You know, how could you make this up? For entertainment purposes only.
While I was watching a video, I learned about a legendary creature that I thought was so absurd I had to cover it. This thing is called the vegetable lamb of Tartary that was believed to come from a vast region of Europe and Central Asia known then as Tartary. Now, I need to give the people who believed in this zoophyte some slack, because this was a popular myth during the Middle Ages. Medieval text describes two varieties of the vegetable lamb. The first produced little newborn lambs inside its pods, and the other had a life-size lamb attached by its belly button to a short plant stem like an umbilical cord. The stem was extremely flexible, so it allowed the tethered lamb to graze on the vegetation around it. But once all the vegetation was eaten, or if the stem broke, the lamb would die. To be honest, if this thing existed, I would love to eat it because it sounds delicious. It is said the vegetable lamb has delicate flesh that tastes. While I was watching,
we dove a little bit into this in my last live. I'm gonna play a quick summary of yesterday's live. Check this out if you haven't already.
It doesn't just grow, it changes its leaves to look like other plants. Imagine a vine crawling up a tree, and then suddenly its leaves start looking exactly like the tree's leaves. It's also kind of like those creepy plant tentacles in the Body Snatcher movies, but this is in real life. But here's the wild thing. Scientists think this vine might actually be able to see in some way. Plants like the Bokila vine have these special cells that can sense light. But they're not just soaking up the sun, they're figuring out what's around them.
Guys, that's fascinating. A plant that can see, you know, we already know they can breathe using photosynthesis. Hey, your boy paid attention a little bit. I just wanted to say that, man. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I believe that's how plants breathe, photosynthesis, y'all. But that's fascinating though. You know, these plants it's a lot to plants they're not really telling us, I believe. You know, we gotta really question everything and dive into them. Especially these giant trees too. But you don't want me to get started about the giant trees. You really don't want me to get started on those. About how the fallen angels chopped them boys. Don't get me started. That's down the line. We're gonna get into that, y'all. And I ain't even talk about the root system. My last video, it's been a minute since we talked about the trees, and I love talking about the trees, to be honest. I didn't even get to dive into that root system, man. There's a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff to talk about. Retro, nature is amazing. Yes, it is. I love nature. I really do.
This vine might be using these cells to copy the leaves it touches. It's like it has its own natural camouflage. And that's got a lot of people in the science world scratching their heads. Some experts even think plants might share some features with animals, maybe even us. This vine's trick of changing its leaves could mean that plants are way smarter than we thought. Maybe they've got something like a brain to process all this info. Crazy, right? But hey, if a plant can act like something out of a sci-fi story, who knows what else is out there in the plant world? The concept of plant species cloning humans might be symbolic of technologies we're familiar with, like test tube babies or cloning farms. But let's take it a step further. What if beyond symbolism, there was once a possibility through some form of advanced husbandry or ancient technology to actually grow animals with plants? Imagine a surgical procedure creating a chimera, a hybrid that continues to grow, tailored with specific characteristics. Consider the complexity of plant life and fungi. They have more genes than animals, suggesting a level of intelligence we haven't yet grasped. Maybe there was once a plant species capable of growing animals, something that doesn't exist anymore. Well, we do have many stories of animals being grown from plants throughout history, but these have been relegated to the realm of myth and/or mistake.
Oh, this is getting good.
That it was simply a misunderstanding. This ties into the Lamb of Tartary. The vegetable lamb of Tartary is a legendary zoophyte of Central Asia, once believed to grow sheep as its fruit. Now, the mainstream explanation for this is that this was simply a misconception, that these were actually cotton plants. However, the problem with that argument is that it relies on ignoring many details of this fascinating story.
Alright guys, I just want you guys to understand what we're talking about now. A sheep is growing off the end of a plant? Whoa. This is fascinating.
The Lamb of Tartary is also called Agnus Sithicus in Latin, and it was also called Boromets, but interestingly, that's the Tartar word for lamb, but it is also referenced in older books as Bonnerets, which I see no mention of on Wiki. Again, the mainstream perspective, mainly due to Henry Lee's book from 1887 on the topic, is believed to be solved. I think that's just a cover-up. This debate has been going on for centuries, as some of the first descriptions of the Boromets come from early Greek authors. Herodotus makes mention of a plant that produces wool in India somewhere around 442 BC, commenting, quote, "Fruit produces wool of a finer and better quality than that of sheep. Of this the natives make their clothes." End quote. Theophrastus, the disciple of Aristotle, had earlier described wool-bearing trees with a pod the size of a spring apple, leaving those of the black mulberry, but the whole plant resembled the dog rose? So a pod? This story is also in the Talmud and Christian Bible, and has been discussed by several Jewish historians. The Mishnah Kilaim section of the Jerusalem Talmud, in attempts to practically expand on agricultural prohibitions mentioned in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, makes an odd foray into cryptozoology when it discusses the Adnei HaSadeh, or Fadua, with a vague, unspecific reference to a slightly more animalistic Yedua. This is also known as the Jedua with a J, which is mentioned in Leviticus 19:31, which has been translated as wizard in the modern day. So is this Jedua associated with alchemy or magic of some kind?
Genesis 30:40 describes how sheep bred in a certain area mixed with forest brush made their coats become speckled. Like forest camouflage, the animal's DNA picked up the surroundings. Whoa. Shout out Method Marine. Let me read that again to y'all that's not listening, man. Let me say that again very slowly. We're going to look this up. Genesis 30:40 describes how sheep bred in a certain area mixed with forest brush made their coats become speckled. Like forest camouflage, the animal's DNA picked up the surroundings. Just like this plant that they were talking about on this. Hey, that's scary. I got goosebumps. It still says Rod, y'all. I was hoping it was going to say. And it's interesting because that's how it says Genesis. Yeah, I'm trying, y'all. I'm trying.
Of the black mulberry, but the whole plant resembled the dog rose? So a pod? This story is also in the Talmud and Christian Bible, and has been discussed by several Jewish historians. The Mishnah Kilaim section of the Jerusalem Talmud, in attempts to practically expand on agricultural prohibitions mentioned in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, makes an odd foray into cryptozoology when it discusses the Adne Ha-Sadeh, or Fadua, with a vague, unspecific reference to a slightly more animalistic Yedua. This is also known as the Jedua with a J, which is mentioned in Leviticus 19:31, which has been translated as wizard in the modern day. So is this Jedua associated with alchemy or magic of some kind?
Could wizards? I don't know, man. Could wizards mean something else? This is definitely creepy.
Interestingly, Adne Ha-Sadeh is not a lamb, but a human that is connected by stem. Yasi from Arki says, "It is a man of the mountain, and it lives from its navel, and if its navel is disconnected from the ground, it cannot live." Rabbi Hamabar Ukva, in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Hanina, the logic of Rabbi Yossi is as follows. The Torah decrees impurity upon anything which touches a corpse upon the field. This must apply to a creature which grows upon the field.
Off in my head. It's like, why would they put all this stuff in such severe detail? Like, especially this painting. Look at this painting, y'all. This is getting dark.
Some later sources elaborated on the Jerusalem Talmud's fantastic description. The Adne Sadeh was described as a wild humanoid beast living high up in local Jewish mountain ranges. Resembling a human being, the Adne Sadeh's life is maintained by a cord which connects its navel to the earth. It is confined to the radius of this cord, which can grow over a mile in length. If this cord is cut, the creature will die. Even though the Adne Sadeh normally feeds on local fruits and vegetables, travelers are warned about entering areas where its cord can reach, as the creature could seize the opportunity for fresh meat. In some sources, the Adne Ha-Sadeh are seen as human-like beings whom God created before Adam and were later wiped into extinction by the deluge of old. Even though this isn't an early source for the vegetable lamb, it's described as a plant-human hybrid, similar to the body snatchers. Imagine a human grown from a plant, connected by a stem, and this idea is even tied to alchemy. The name for this plant in modern translations mean wizard.
Somebody said it reminds me of Harry Potter. Man, that's a great point. What was them little things that was crying? Them druids. You know? Now we going down the druid order and all that stuff. Oh my goodness.
In the ancient Hebrew work, Maseh Tobia, there's a fascinating description of this. It talks about the animal Boromets found in Great Tartary. The author repeats Rabbi Simeon's description and adds details from a new work of geography. It said that in Great Tartary, in the province of Sambulala, people grow seeds resembling gourd seeds but shorter. These seeds bloom into a stem connected to the navel of an animal called Boromets, meaning lamb because it looks just like one. It's got cloven hooves, soft skin, and wool perfect for clothing. It doesn't have horns, but its head hair grows twisted like horns. The Boromet stands half a cubit tall. People say that it tastes like fish, and its blood is as sweet as honey, and it lives as long as it can reach herbage from its stem. If the herbage dies, so does the Boromets. It's really interesting how detailed these descriptions of the vegetable lamb are.
This is a chimera plant, y'all. Can you imagine that thing talking? Look, it's got a little frown on its head, like it's about to say something evil. Look at his face. He got a little indentation, like yeah, man, come here. I got some secrets for you, cuz. I got some stuff you ain't heard about. Look at his face. That's what he's saying. They didn't draw it happily, smiling. They put an indentation in, like on some evil takeover type. Yeah, man, guess what? We growing off the tree, cuz you'd never guess. We've been growing off the tree. All this GMO cotton, fresh off a plant. But you would think these would be the true organics. If it did pop off, you would think that this would be the best cotton you can get because it's organic. It's not synthesized. It's coming from a plant, right?
And they certainly don't seem to be talking about a cotton plant. There's even a depiction in the 1656 edition of John Parkinson's Pardisi in Sol Paradisus Terrestris, where, alongside Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, you can see the lamb tree thriving. In Du Bartas, his Divine Weeks and Works, there's a poem about the Garden of Eden that mentions this lamb plant. This connection to alchemy is intriguing and adds another layer to the story. But the main source for the Lamb of Tartary tale comes from Sir John Mandeville, a 14th century English knight and author. After a 34-year journey, he returned to England and brought this strange plant story to Europe's attention. In his book, credited with introducing this phenomenon to Europe, he describes it in a unique way. Interestingly, Mandeville describes it more like a tree with pods. This description comes from the chapter 29 of his book, focusing on the countries beyond the land of Cathay and their fruits, including...
Listen to what he just said. The countries and isles that are beyond the lands of Cathay. What if Cathay is what we know now? Let that sink in. It says countries and isles that are beyond the lands of Cathay. This is the different continents beyond the ice wall. For entertainment purposes only.
22 kinds include...
Hit that like and subscribe button, man. We on these waters, man. I need a break. Can I get a lunch? Do I get a lunch? Do I get a 15-minute break on these? Do I get a 15-minute break on these waters? Damn. I'm supposed to get a lunch, right? I get one lunch, right? Yeah, let me take my lunch. Give me 5. No, I'm just playing. Give me a little bit. Hold on. Y'all funny, man. I was supposed to get a lunch, man. I get a 5-minute lunch. Y'all got me on these waters. I'm supposed to get a lunch. I'm calling a temp service, man. I'm about to call on staff, manpower. Calling the temp service. I'm saying y'all ain't giving me my lunch. Y'all said a part of this gig it's 8 hours and I get 2 lunches and I must have steel toes. The temp service said, "Do you want to be on Dark Waters night?" And I said, "Yeah." They said you need steel toes and you need, it's gonna be 8 hours and I get my lunch. This is not part of the plan.
Closed within the mountains. What's really interesting here is that there are several elements in the chapter that seem interconnected but are often overlooked in discussions about the Lamb of Tartary. Well, this is what he says. Quote, "Now shall I say you, suingly, of countries and isles that beyond the countries that I've spoken of. Wherefore I say you in passing by the land of Cathay, toward the high end and towards Becaria, men pass by a kingdom that men clape Caldali, that is a full fair country. And there groweth a manner of fruit, as though it were gourds. And when they be ripe, men cut them a two, and men find within a little beast, in flesh, in bone, in blood, as though it were a little lamb without wool. And men eat both the fruit and the beast, and that is a great marvel. Of that fruit I have eaten, although it were wonderful, but that I know well that God is marvelous in his works. And natheless I told them as great a marvel to them that is amongst us, and that was of the Bernakes. End quote. But listen to what he says next. Quote, for I told them that in our country were trees that bear a fruit that become birds flying, and those that fell in the water live, and that they fall on the earth die anon, and they be right good to man's meat. And hereof had they as great marvel, that some of them troud it were an impossible thing to be. End quote.
The fact that they got art of this is creepy. You know, this is accurate. This is super creepy, y'all.
Now, there's no way the Lamb of Tartary could just be mixed up with the cotton plant. Let's break that down. 1. There are pods and flesh. Their description clearly mentions pods and a fruit with actual flesh and blood. This isn't your typical plant imagery. 2. He shows awareness of similar marvels. The author acknowledges other marvels, hinting at a broader knowledge of such phenomena. He even suggests that people thought these marvels impossible, which implies there's truth to them. 3. The flesh is for food, not wool. The plant is said to grow flesh meant for eating, not wool, which means this was grown as some type of food. You don't eat cotton, right? So this blows the cotton plant theory out of the water. 4.
I believe, honestly, beyond the land, there's possibly plants and creatures we haven't seen for entertainment purposes. And I appreciate you guys for hitting that like button.
There's even a separate wool-bearing tree that is later mentioned in the same chapter. There's talk of trees in Beccaria bearing wool like sheep's wool, used to make clothes. This is distinct from the first land plant, which grows without wool. The author even ties this to the barnacle goose legend, another dismissed myth.
Ugh. Look at this, y'all. It's wearing clothes. Who would draw something like this?
Barnacle goose legend, another dismissed myth. Speaking of the barnacle goose, this legend is pretty wild. It describes geese emerging fully formed from plants, not eggs. Some illustrations even show what look like pods. The earliest account of this is in an 11th century book of riddles. What's more, it's linked to a dead tree, maybe hinting at putrefaction, alchemy, and spontaneous generation. Pope Pius II describes it as, quote, we heard that in Scotland there was once a tree growing on the bank of a river which produced fruits shaped like a duck.
This is not the first illustration that we've seen that was red. Why are they making the tree red?
Pope Pius II describes it as, quote, we heard that in Scotland there was once a tree growing on the bank of a river which produced fruits shaped like a duck. When these were nearly ripe, they dropped down of their own accord, some into the earth and some into the water. Those that landed on the earth rotted away, but those that sank into the water instantly came to life, swam out from below the water.
That looked like a griffin. Man, how crazy are these images? They was on one, bro. To draw this. Look at this face. What is going on? These are creatures beyond the wall.
Rotted away, but those that sank into the water instantly came to life, swam out from below the water, and immediately flew into the air, equipped with feathers and wings. End quote. And believe it or not, this myth stuck around all the way until the 18th century. It even caught the attention of John Gerald, a renowned herbalist, and Carl Linnaeus, the famous Swedish taxonomist. It's also fascinating that completely separate from the Lamb of Tartary and the barnacle goose, is another legend that the Chinese refer to as the water sheep. And it's not just folklore here. There are actual documents from the Han Dynasty around the 5th century AD that mention the down of the water sheep. Then in the Tang Dynasty, around the 10th century AD, we get even more concrete descriptions. Gustav Schlegel translated one such account. Quote, "There are lambs which grow in the ground. The natives wait till they're about to sprout and then build a wall to enclose them in order to prevent beasts coming from outside devouring them. Now their navels are connected with the earth, and if these are cut, they will die. But the people, the shepherds, don their cuirasses and gallop about on horseback, beating all the while on drums in order to frighten them. The lambs then get afraid and, with a shriek, they rend their navels and are then driven into the water pasturages." End quote. Baron Sigismund von Eberstein was a diplomat for the Holy Roman Empire, particularly when it came to Russian affairs, and his major work, Rerum Moscoviticarum Commentary, Notes on Muscovite Affairs, claimed to have discussed the vegetable lamb with many credible sources who suggested it was common to an area in the region of the Caspian Sea. Quote, "In the neighborhood of the Caspian Sea, between the rivers Volga and Jake, formerly dwelt the kings of Zavolha, certain Tartars, in whose country is found a wonderful and almost incredible curiosity, of which Demetrius Danielovich, a person in high authority, gave me the following account. Namely, that his father, who was once sent on an embassy by the Duke of Muscovy to the Tartar king of the country referred to, whilst he was there, saw and remarked amongst other things, a certain seed like that of a melon, but rather rounder and longer, from which, when it was set in the earth, grew a plant resembling a lamb, and attaining to a height of about 2.5 feet, and which was called in the language of the country Boromets, or the little lamb. It had a head, eyes, ears, and all other parts of the body as a newly born lamb. He also stated that it had an exceedingly soft wool, which was frequently used for the manufacturing of head coverings. Many persons also affirmed to me that they had seen this wool. Further, he told me that this plant, if a plant it should be called, had blood, but not true flesh, that in place of flesh, it had a substance similar to the flesh of the crab, and that its hooves were not horny like those of the lamb, but of the hairs brought together into the form of the divided hoof of a living lamb. It was rooted by the navel in the middle of the belly, and devoured the surrounding herbage and grass, and lived as long as that lasted.
I ain't gonna lie, I don't get creeped out. Like I can really hang in there with some creepy stuff, but this is probably top of the line for me. Like it's like, damn.
When there was no more within its reach, the stem withered, and the lamb died. It was so excellent a flavor that it was the favorite food of wolves and other rapacious animals. From Herbertin's Rerum Moscoviticarum Commentary, 1549. End quote. But let's get real about this whole vegetable lamb thing. Most modern historians are quick to brush it off as a quirky way to describe cotton plants. But I'm not really buying that explanation. Here's why. First off, cotton's been around in India and Central America for ages, but it only showed up in Europe in the 8th century, thanks to the Moors conquering Spain and Sicily. Before that, Europe was all about sheep's wool. Now, medieval Europe was no stranger to superstitions, but let's not forget, most people back then were farmers. They knew their plants and animals inside out. Sure, they might find an exotic plant odd, maybe even spooky, but they know a plant when they saw one. They wouldn't mistake it for some half-plant, half-animal freak of nature. The scholars and travel writers of the Middle Ages, the guys penning down all the botany books and travel guides, they were a bit more clued up. They wouldn't just mix up a cotton plant with some mythical creature, especially not if there was money to be made. And then there's this wild link with the Chinese tale of the water sheep. When we dig into the folklore, It's too easy to think that our ancestors didn't know what they were talking about or that they were just plain dumb. But that's not giving them enough credit. They weren't complete idiots. So we've got two types of these mythical plants. First, there's ones producing pods that transform into animals. Then there's another with a stem connected to a navel. Cut it, and the hybrid dies. But isn't it interesting that modern science often acts like it's got everything figured out? But that's a bit naive. Consider the science fiction concepts that are now becoming reality. With the rapid pace of progress, what once seemed impossible is now within reach. Yet, while many are open to the idea of advanced plant aliens from another planet, there's reluctance to entertain the possibility that such life forms could have existed in our realm in the past. It's a curious contradiction. We're willing to embrace futuristic concepts in science fiction, but hesitant to consider similar possibilities in our own history. Some might argue that the idea of merging plants with humans isn't scientific, but let's remember that alchemy, the precursor to modern chemistry and science, often explored the harmonious integration of the natural world, including plants and humans. Take the mandrake for instance. It's traditionally depicted as a human figure emerging from the ground. This plant is steeped in folklore, known for its uses in spells and inducing dark hallucinations, famously referred to as the screaming of the mandrake.
The screaming of the mandrake on Harry Potter. That makes sense now. Okay. That's what I was thinking of.
Delving deeper into alchemy, we find numerous illustrations of men and women with branches sprouting from their bodies. While these could be seen as symbolic, the sheer number of these depictions is striking. Alchemy was about extracting the essence of plants to create transformative elixirs. This concept is vividly explored in the Voynich manuscript, which focuses on the use of plants in the creation of spiritual bodies. Moreover, various cultures have legends about humans originating from plants. For example, in Buddhist mythology, there's the Nari Fawn. This tree bears fruit in the form of young female figures. These are maidens growing attached by their heads to the tree branches. There are supposedly two Macalaiporn pods.
What y'all got me working on? They done found 2 real mandrakes, y'all. Shout out to Mina Unveiled. What is this? Is this real or not?
In a Buddhist temple near Bangkok. It's believed that the Nari Fawn originated from the Haima Fawn, a mythical forest in Buddhist lore. While hoaxes are prevalent, including photos of Nari Fawn girls sprouting from trees and dried Nari Fawn figures, the depth of this legend's integration into the culture is fascinating.
Yeah, that was just a quick summary over yesterday's live. So we're talking about the Lamb of Tartary and all these different distinctions. We have to dive in and see if there's any truth to it. Do you guys believe it? Yes or no? Do you guys believe could this be possible? Plant/mammal hybrid. Yo, is that one? You gotta be kidding me. Did they actually have one? You guys let me know in the comments below. Is this real? That is creepy. This is outlandish.
While I was watching a video, I learned about a legendary creature that I thought was so absurd, I had to cover it. This thing is called the vegetable lamb of Tartary, that was believed to come from a vast region of Europe and Central Asia, known then as Tartary. Now, I need to give the people who believed in this zoophyte some slack, because this was a popular myth during the Middle Ages. Medieval text describes two varieties of the vegetable lamb. The first produced little newborn lambs inside its pods, and the other had a life-size lamb attached by its belly button to a short plant stem like an umbilical cord. The stem was extremely flexible, so it allowed the tethered lamb to graze on the vegetation around it. But once all the vegetation was eaten, or if the stem broke, the lamb would die.
All right, guys, this is a representation of the Lamb of Tartary. That is bonkers.
To be honest, if this thing existed, I would love to eat it because it sounds delicious. It is said the vegetable lamb has delicate flesh that tasted like fish and blood as sweet as honey. In Jewish folklore, there was a similar sheep plant creature that was from 436 AD called the Yedua, if I said that correctly. Those who looked for it and found it could only harvest the creature by severing it from its stem with arrows or darts specifically. Once the animal was severed, it died, and its bones could be used in divination and prophetic ceremonies. While I was watching a video, I learned about a legendary
Guys, this is absolutely blowing me out the water. The Lamb of Tartary. You look at something what is called the mycelium network. You know, these plants are very intelligent and can communicate. So there's no telling what type of GMO modification, early GMO modifications they could have did back in the day and how advanced it was. Check this out.
Tree is cut down in the forest, other trees reach out to the victim with their root tips and send life-saving sustenance, water, sugar, and other nutrients via the mycelium. This continuous IV drip from neighboring trees can keep the stump alive for decades and even centuries. And they don't only do it for their own kind, they do it for the trees of other species. Why? Is it because they know that their lives depend on the health of the whole forest, and even on beings very different from themselves? Is it possible that the trees can think in longer terms than we do? When a tree is cut down in the forest,
Hey, he seemed pretty cool when he ain't on his NASA stuff, huh? Like if he was strictly plants and herbs, you know, it would be a whole different perspective, wouldn't it? That was pretty chill, wasn't it?
All across the world. I think it's a revolution from the underground that we are all interconnected, and we're interconnected by mycelium, which is virtually everywhere. The mycelium is not only a metaphor, but it's a cellular immunological network that's so important for sustainability, biodiversity, so important for the reasons why we're here today, and to protect our children's future.
There's an experiment that Japanese scientists did, and what they did is there was a labyrinth that represented the Tokyo subway system, and they planted mycelium, aka the mushroom, and they placed food on the other side of this virtual toy version of the subway system. And the mycelium, aka the mushroom, through time found a more optimized way of finding the endpoint, aka the food, than the engineers had crafted the Tokyo underground metro system. So the entire Japanese current metro system is based on the mycelium network's movement because it is intelligent.
I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty intelligent. They said, we're not going to try and figure this out. Let the mycelium go ahead and figure the route out for us. Hey, there it is. What if they merged AI and mycelium and we had some bio AI running around? Ooh, that's scary. I probably should delete that. That's a great idea. AI and mycelium fused together. Hey, we need to hit me up, man. Hit me up on my email. We might be able to work something out.
I haven't tried it.
So when you touch a mushroom, it's really a window into an underground network that you can't see. And the mycelial networks actually have enormous capacity for size. The largest organism in the world is the mycelial network in eastern Oregon, 2,200 acres in size. And yet it's only one cell wall thick. Now, surrounding the mycelium, there can be more than 1,000 species of bacteria in a single gram. The mycelium can grow for 10, 100 years, 1,000 years, and then surface in a reproductive form in the presence of a mushroom. A single cubic inch of soil can have more than 8 miles of these fine threads. They are deterministic in setting up ecosystems that lead to biodiversity, because that biodiversity then will sustain their own progeny. So these are governing networks in the food web. So when you
tried anything synthetic, everything that I've tried comes from the earth. And the reason I'll explain it why, it may sound a little pseudoscience or crazy, but the mycelium network, right, the network of the mushrooms, it carries data and information. It carries information and data on the earth, the history of the earth, the people that have interacted and walked on the earth. Because sometimes you get an idea, but how do you know? People are like, oh, I'm a genius. Well, how do you know that that idea is yours? Maybe you're not a genius. Maybe you were in the right place at the right time to capture that idea and that thought. So what the mycelium network does when you consume mushrooms is it gives you access to a different frequency. You get downloads of information, right? Like software into your brain that radically change your life. They give you a perspective of reality that you have not experienced. They reroute your neural networks. They teach you how to think differently.
This has been proven in science.
This has been proven. I haven't tried anything synthetic.
Man, when he said that, that reminded me of Avatar. When they tapped into that tree, what was it? The Tree of Whispers. Yeah, there it is. I only seen the first one, y'all. I gotta see the second one. Is the third one out already? I don't know. But I know I gotta see the second one. But that reminds me about the Tree of Whispers. When they were hooking up that little thing to the tree and it suddenly talked to him. I think we might be on to something.
For the third time, y'all, and this is gonna be the best one. Because do y'all know what the mycelium network is? Why does it connect all plant life on the planet? And why does it look just like the neuroplasticity in our brain? Look, so if you don't know what the mycelium network is, read this. And basically, it is it's an intelligent form of fungus that has been around for millions, hundreds of millions of years. It has seen everything and survived through everything. Like, I personally think it's what keeps the planet going. But like I said, this form of intelligence, because just calling it a fungus does not do it enough justice. This form of intelligence has seen it all. So look, this is the life cycle of a fungus, right? And the mycelium part is when the fungus is at its strongest phase. But the part that we eat is just the fruit, all right? It's the reproduction of it. And the spore is so the spore is like leaving the seed. But peep how the mycelium look and peep how the roots of the mushroom look, all right? That's called hyphae. Hyphae. That hyphae is what spreads in the soil and connects from plant to plant, tree to tree. All right, so let me show y'all this video real quick.
The transfer of nutrients. They then began to study flow patterns within the fungus, making videos of the complex patterns of movement. You can actually see here that the fungus stops the flow of nutrients in one direction and reverses it, sending them back the other way. The scientists think that this is our first look into how fungi can redirect nutrients in response to their environment. It could even be that these oscillations of molecules represent some kind of communication. Could this be how these complex fungal networks transmit information?
I'm about to make a part 2 because I don't want this video to be too long, but the key points to take away from that was it can redirect nutrients in response to its environment. The word communication, the word network, and the word information. It's extremely tapped into the environment because it's connected to every plant, it's sensing everything, and it's communicating information between plants and other environments.
Bro talking to the tree like, listen.
Plant life still live in symbiosis with fungi via an underground network of tubular cells called mycelium. See, fungi live most of their lives as fungi bodies, which is this mycelium network, also known as Earth's natural internet. About 80% of all plant life actually connects up to each other through this network, which is why it's referred to as nature's internet. It's how they get their water, their minerals, their oxygen. It's how they live, it's how they thrive, it's how they survive. If it wasn't for fungi, if it wasn't for mycelium, nothing in the forest would be able to live. Plant life still live in symbiosis.
So mycelium.
I've been fasting for 18 hours and I'm gonna break it with this. GT's Alive Ancient Mushroom Elixir.
So mycelium networks are basically the internet for plants. No comment as to whether this is how the leaf shape changing thing from the previous video happened, but here is Olivia with more.
The internet connects more than half of the world's population through an invisible web of servers, computers, and devices. It's changed our lives in countless ways, by allowing otherwise separated people to interact, and by providing—
I've been fasting for 18 hours and I'm gonna break it with this. GT's Alive Ancient Mushroom Elixir. Now let's break down the ingredients and health benefits. Ginger contains gingerol, which has potent medicinal properties. Ginger lowers your blood sugar, improves heart health, digestion, etc. Turmeric contains curcumin, which is a powerful substance that contains antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. For thousands of years, turmeric has been used for arthritis, respiratory infections, allergies, liver disease, depression, and many others. As you can see right here, turmeric and curcumin are poorly absorbed by the body. That's why you take it with black pepper. It's incredibly healthy and it increases the bioavailability of turmeric by 2,000%. It also contains apple cider vinegar. It'll help if you need to lose weight if you have digestive issues. It's antifungal and antibacterial. If you know, you know. Now let's talk about mushrooms and adaptogens. Adaptogens come from plants and fungus and they have powerful health benefits. They're more effective than the supplements 77% of Americans take. They relieve stress, support the immune system, energy levels, and overall health. Inside that drink is reishi, chaga, and turkey tail. Fun fact, mushrooms are bigger than you think. When you think of a mushroom, it's usually a leg and a little cap, right? That's what's known as the fruiting body. That comes above the earth so the mushroom can reproduce. Most of the mushroom is a mass of thin threads that stretch hundreds of feet below the earth. This network is like the Earth's internet. 90% of the plants on land are connected to it. It's how they communicate. If you got mushroom supplements, get at me. Share this and follow me for more on health and wellness. I've been fasting.
That is fascinating. For entertainment purposes only, do your own research on everything. But yeah, I think that elixir sounds good, man. I need it, man. I be eating frozen pizzas and Jacks and Squirt all day. Matter of fact, I need a new one. But yeah. That's it for today's episode, man. I'm trying to bring these out consistently for you. If you haven't already, smash that like and subscribe button. We're probably going to be going live here soon. But yeah, man, these plants, the mycelium network, these Boromir plants, I don't even know how to say it, but we're not done with this topic, man. Lamb of Tartary, we're not done. We're going to be covering this for a minute till I feel some type of closure on here. Some type of point to the direction, northeast, southwest, lands beyond. We need to know something. Shout out to all the Dark Waters 9 members. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for supporting the movement, and I'll see you guys on the next video.